Hi, my name is Mark Rolog. I own a company called xtDirect, been in business for 20 years. And so the advantage of what you're going to get with this program is learning how to generate leads, both with an old school preference or old school knowledge and with the new modern technology of artificial intelligence, AI, so to speak, and then as well as how to generate leads on a cost-effective basis and manage leads, and what the future holds for lead generation, because it's the number one thing you need to make sales. You need to have leads. Today, we're going to have a lead guru in artificial intelligence or AI named Dustin Dye from California. He's coming all the way here just to talk about AI, real estate leads, and how that impacts the world of leads in general, but also real estate leads. I 100% guarantee this is worth your time. You're going to learn a lot about lead generation and AI.
I'm Dustin Dye. I work with Bot Copy, and we do contact AI solutions for Google Cloud. We provide a front end for mobile and web applications to power creative and brilliant AI solutions.
Very cool. And today we're primarily talking about real estate leads, but this kind of applies to everything from real estate leads to insurance leads to whatever. But our focus today is kind of a little bit on real estate leads and kind of the fun things we've been doing from a kind of a, I hate to say old school, new school type of thing, but it's lead generation. You know, it's one of those things where, like Mark Cuban says, sales cures all.
Yeah,
it
does.
And by the time you go through like a Grant Cardone where it's leads, you know, you can't have sales without leads.
Yeah.
And it's true, I think, for every business. If you don't have leads, you don't have anybody to call to make sales.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody, sorry I have to interrupt this, but I just want to let you know that I accidentally forgot to tell you when I originally did the video. I need you to smash the like button or hit the like button and hit the subscribe button. And the reason for that is, one, it helps the Google algorithm, two, it helps me, and three is we've got a video coming up next week that's going to be all on how to get free search engine optimization help for your real estate agency or your chiropractic office, etc. And free tips, free everything. And not only that, but that free advice takes effect in 2 days. It's not like all this SEO stuff you hear, oh, it's going to take you months to build up all that. Literally, you do what we say. We'll show you how to measure it, show you how to make sure you get results. And it's a super fantastic video that's going to be probably 30 minutes long. So hit the subscribe button now and hit like, please. Thank you so much, and on with the rest of the video about real estate leads and lead generation. Thank you.
Yeah.
So,
from quantity of leads to quality of leads, it's all extremely important. I'm excited to get into it with you.
Yeah. So, you know, we've been talking before because we had lunch, and hopefully we didn't talk about everything.
Kind of wish we had the camera rolling now.
Yeah, exactly. So you know, how we came about doing business together is we have a client that's the largest franchise in the United States for real estate.
Yeah.
And everything is about generating leads. And, you know, they have so many visitors to their website, and it's like anything else. You know, if you went to Jimmy John's or went to have a pizza or whatever, and you come through the door and nobody greets you, you know, you're not going to have a great customer experience. And it's about, you know, having, you know, whether it's website or on the phone, where you've got people coming through the door on your website, and then you've got to be able to handle this mass quantity of leads and greet them and do what they want. And we had been studying AI for web chat basically for years, and we have done standard web chat. And what we've seen is the AI actually can have a better conversation than a normal web agent. Mm-hmm. Does that eliminate a web agent? No. What we've done is combine this hybrid model.
We're creating cyborgs.
Yeah. And it's amazing. The results are absolutely amazing. And both of us have kind of a real estate background, or I have I'm not a real estate agent, but I know quite a bit about ag land and rental properties and that type of thing. And
I've sold a few homes in the past, so.
Yeah. So anyway, why don't you go through your background a little bit and kind of how you arrived at Bot Copy? And
Yeah, so my background before Bot Copy was in real estate, primarily commercial and residential. So this use case kind of hits home for me a little bit on understanding the value behind leads. It's very important. Real estate in general is a pretty competitive space, and if you can't nurture a client or communicate well, then that lead's just going to go to the next agent or broker with a different company. If you can't follow up, communicate promptly, they move on. So it was interesting to come from real estate, meet you, kind of work on this project together. But a little bit backtracking, Bot Copy we started like 4 years ago with the idea of a bunch of creative writers in LA kind of coming together to take a crack at better copywriting for chatbots and the AI solution. We were early days of Siri. I was kind of curious on who gets to write that. Like, what a fun gig, to yell at Siri and then get to write the response that yells at you back. I thought that was pretty cool. So LA had a pool of talented writers, and we kind of went and took off in that space. But creative as the experience was, it was always limited to where the experience existed and where was the most valuable place for it to exist. And for clients with a lot of web traffic, that was it. If you could have a help desk just hit your website immediately with like a perfect message that's contextual to, hey, this is my first time saying hi to you, or hey, you purchased a home from us in the past. What's going on? Can we help you resell the home? Can we do this? Like adding context, there's cool things to do there. So we morphed that creative agency into a full software, kind of partnered with Google. They have a really powerful natural language understanding framework called Dialogflow. So we partnered with that, and we work with great big companies like you guys and try to take over on the web, having better chat experiences. So with this particular use case that we're working on in the real estate space, like what before going with this angle, I know you were managing calls that were coming in, a previous chat server, like what was the big problem? Like, was it too many calls? You couldn't handle the volume, and that way you were just like, well, it's too expensive, so we're just going to turn it off. Or
too many chats.
Too many chats.
It's like if you really proactively try to communicate, the chats were so many you couldn't have a human being handle them.
Because the human's only handling it one-on-one, right? Most of the time?
Yeah, or even if you're doing 3-on-1 or whatever, you still can't handle giving the correct answer or the correct... And everybody in general in real estate is looking for the same thing. They want to buy, they want to sell, they want to rent. And if they want to buy, they're either looking at a specific property or they're looking in a general area.
Yeah.
And so, but we would look them up, and it just takes time to actually look up the information, come back with the information, and you're just doing kind of a copy and paste on the chat. And we've always thought there's a better way to do it, because there's two forms of kind of like handling that communication. One is people like chatting.
Yeah.
Because they're right there. And one of the things we found early on when we had this other product that was just a chat communication tool was we could tell that the people are actually right in front of the property sending a chat message. So rather than calling the number on the sign, they're actually chatting.
Just interacting with it.
And then they would hope they were chatting, or they would, they just had questions. And either for some reason a percentage wanted to kind of be anonymous.
Yeah.
But then a percentage wanted to, hey, I want to see that house. I want to go right now. Can I do it this afternoon? That type of thing. And so the same communication you get on the phone, people are just comfortable. I mean, even my mom sends SMS messages or text messages, and she's 90.
Yeah.
Well,
one of the bigger problems I used to experience in real estate was most of the buyers or people who are trying to purchase a home, they're looking after work, right? They have work all during the day, and then they go kind of shopping either on the weekends or after hours. And whether you're reaching the listing agent or your lender to see if you're going to get approved to finance the home, you're calling them after hours. And most of the time, people aren't answering those phone calls and then follow up with you the next day. And these are like people who are trying to make a decision kind of quickly, see the house, things like that. So if you can have something that fields it instantaneously, then you're creating already the first decent touch point in the relationship on closing that client, capturing that lead.
Yeah, and that's what we've seen is just like, I'm from Omaha, which is kind of call center capital of the world, and one of the bigger successful call centers, they would capture all the data. We did work for Capital One, and people would think, back when they were just doing a telemarketing call, they literally tracked 4,800 bytes of data for every time we attempted to make a phone call. And so they would literally track that data, remodel that call center data or that telemarketing data the next month, and repackage it, and then try a different way. And that way they could tell, Dustin answers the phone at 5 o'clock, but he doesn't answer the phone at 10 a.m.
Yeah.
And they would relearn that data so they constantly know, hey, next time we call you back to buy a product. And it's super interesting, but true, is Capital One, everybody thinks of the credit card. They actually internally, their slogan is Capital One. We're an information technology company that sells financial services products. Yeah. They keep the data is everything.
And I think that's the same play for most of these franchise real estate companies like Century 21 or Keller Williams. They have that same model where we give you the tools to be the best brokers in the space.
Yep.
Create your own franchise, umbrella under our branding, things like that. And it's amazing. It's a great business model.
So, and then what we've seen is like the follow-up. So in the call center world, we have this kind of follow-up mechanism, but there's never been this follow-up mechanism, especially in no matter what size company you are, handling the amount of web chats that actually can happen. Like if you proactively say, hi, we're glad you're here on our website.
Yeah.
Let us know if we can help you. You're asking them to create a conversation, and they will have a conversation with you. Even if it's a quote unquote kind of a chat bot or a chat AI, they're going to have a conversation. And if you do that with a live person, you can't handle a call center can't handle the amount of conversations you have, whether it's, Illinois Department of Labor, or whether it's a real estate company. They just can't handle the amount. And the AI has always been this kind of mystical world that as owners of companies, they feel like I've got to go and I've got to spend $20 million to program this up. Yeah. And it's going to take 2 years to get it programmed up. They don't realize the automatic learning process. And there's creativity in setting it up for sure, in directing how you want the conversation to go.
One approach I like to do with some of the IT stuff that we do, because sometimes it just seems way over when you're pitching an idea or like introducing AI to a company for the first time. It's a lot more human than people think. So if we go through the current operations, like how, without computers, without anything, how are you fielding these calls? It looks like you're getting a lot of contacts calling you. Like, walk us through that process. So in this situation, it sounds like someone's interested to buy, sell, or rent a home. They make a phone call, a live agent answers the phone call, figures out whether they want to buy, sell, or rent, right? Figures out what area they're interested in, figures out their budget, their email, all this other stuff. And that's just one-on-one, one person, one live agent. They did that very well, right? Now, then there's the next step. So a lot of people think about the leads as just kind of capturing the lead, but then they have to store it. So I'm not familiar. What is the process? Like, when the live agents actually get this information in the chat, what do?
Well, they handle getting the customer to a local broker, to a local agent.
Yeah.
And the data doesn't really get managed we don't manage it in the call center to follow up. it would be, down the road. I think the future is getting that right to the agent in the same fashion the customer wants to communicate.
Yeah.
Kind of phase 10 of anything is like, hey, somebody goes to the website and it automatically says somebody's on the website or looking at that property, and the agent themselves, the real estate agent, can proactively communicate.
Yeah.
That's kind of the be all end all, kind of like when they get to like the third picture, it starts to interact, because now you've got somebody that shows, hey, I'm a little bit more than just, drifting through the catalog. I want that product. I want that house. I want to look at that. When they start looking at the third, fourth picture, it's something they're interested in. And then proactively have that go either to, start having the conversation with a chat AI and determine kind of the level where they're at, and then capture that lead. And ultimately that lead has to go to a real estate agent. And it's that speed to go to the agent and track it, and then realize, all agents are not equal.
Yeah.
There's the 20% that are the, aggressive, go out and make sales, and then there's 80% that are order takers.
Yeah.
The nice thing is, through the AI, you can kind of make the order taker have the same capabilities as the superstar.
Yeah.
The people that are not bashful to call people at 6:30 at night and say, hey, are you interested in selling your house? So you kind of see this AI kind of creating a more level playing field. And I think what we were talking about earlier, which we kind of talked a little bit old school, new school,
Yeah.
we're in Dallas today.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, I actually, like 20 years ago, went to a Zig Ziglar deal, actually went and had dinner at Zig Ziglar's house.
Yeah.
And, he would say, one of the things that stuck in my head 20 years ago, if you as a salesperson write down and take notes, you're 80% more effective. Means you're going to make 80% more money than the salesperson that doesn't write notes.
I mean, this is what we talked about at lunch of it, right? So a good salesperson taking notes right after the phone call is like thinking about it, because you can get 100 leads and they can just be kind of a numbers game. You're just like, oh, well, these are 100 leads. We're going to close maybe 5% of them. Sweet. And we're going to run on those numbers. Just the more numbers, the merrier. And then you have a decent salesperson who's taking notes and says, well, actually, I don't need those 100. I'll take this 15 and I'm going to close 80% of them.
Yep.
And their conversion rates are going to be higher. But an IT person would look at those notes and say, that's a pretty good algorithm. Let's take your process and train some kind of computer program to do that.
Yeah.
So with the lead gen, when a live agent comes in, collects a little bit of information, I think traditionally they're maybe even copying and pasting an email over to a broker, looking up a broker in that area. So as far as the AI, you can, and with Dialogflow, we can create these experiences where it recognizes the email, the intent the email was sent, captures the email. It stores it in your lead gen list. And then that list is sent and cross-references a broker in that area where that would be of value if it had this lead. And can send automatically without even having a person to come in. And streamlining that whole process is kind of the tip of the iceberg. Where it gets really interesting is, again, those notes in that algorithm on the additional data behind all that lead. Like, you can find out quickly just by recording all this that hotspots around the U.S. where this area looks like rentals are very high for this particular price range, or this area people want to buy. So you can kind of, as a business, you could plan out your brokers accordingly. Like, send your, the buyers over in this area because this is a buying hotspot, and the renters in this area. And
you could real-time adjust your marketing budget. You could real-time adjust your online ad spend.
Exactly.
I mean, if we would have had that, because who would have ever thought everybody would be moving from New York down to Florida?
Yeah.
Or moving from New York or California to Texas. Last year, a month earlier than right now, in January of 2020, who would ever thought that would happen? And yet 3 months later, pretty much everybody in the industry went from heading downhill as soon as COVID started to the best year real estate companies have had in forever. And it's all this transition, all these people that are either buying and selling or buying a second home. And you could literally see that, or we would have been able to see that by adding AI at that time. Mm-hmm. You could literally heat map and see these are where people are online and this is where they're looking. Right now, right or wrong, most of the data of where people are moving is provided by the moving companies.
Yeah.
It's not the real estate. It should be the real estate companies. It should be instantly tracked, just like Google. Yeah. Google knows 30 days ahead of time where the flu is going to hit in the country. Mm-hmm. Because they can start seeing people Googling symptoms for having the flu.
Yeah.
And they know before an outbreak happens, they know it's coming.
Yeah.
So,
that's the power of having kind of an organized set of data.
Yeah.
Where you can kind of start to look at, here's some additional value in these leads and things that we're generating. As far as leads for real estate in particular, what do you think the average value, what is the value of a lead here?
Oh, easily a value of, if you're, I'll give you an idea. Usually it's 1/3 of the buy side commission if you're a licensed real estate agent. Mm. So basically 1% of the value of the house is what the lead is worth. Mm. So, $250,000 house, you're talking, $2,500 for a lead.
And
if you looked at it like the traditional, granted our world, we're generating leads as not licensed real estate agents. So we're not selling them, quote unquote, we're generating them.
Yeah.
But when somebody calls somebody, because I know I've got friends in New York that they sell leads down to real estate agents in Florida for 1/3 of the buy side commission. So basically 1/3 of 3%.
Yeah.
So 1%. So they're valuable. Yeah. And ag leads are even higher. They're easily, you could sell a agricultural lead or farmland lead for $10,000 a piece.
Yeah. I think the biggest issue I've seen, traditionally, and then even slowly, moving into now, is this concept on, yes, sales are everything, and you should focus on sales 100%. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean you should always focus on new sales.
Yep.
Right? So if you have this amazing slick process and all these data sets and things like that in place where you can really analyze your customers and understand the audience and all that, you can target people to get more sales.
Yep.
And close kind of them for the first time.
Yep.
But for me, and a more important, I think, underlooked aspect on lead gen is keeping those leads.
Yeah.
Because capturing them, especially with things that we've been doing on the chat, is relatively simple. It's going to be, people like it, they enjoy it, it's instantaneous. Now the setup might not be simple out of the gates, but it works.
Yeah.
And on the user interface side, it's simple. So what isn't is, how do we follow up? How do we add value additionally to these leads? Whether that follow-up's a day later and they get an email, or maybe a text message, or they come back to the website and it says, hey, are you still interested in buying this home that you told us about? That, if companies spend more time there, I think they're going to, the $2,500 per lead is going to be more. Mm-hmm. Because the likelihood of that lead closing, you're building a relationship with these leads. Yep. Just like any relationship, whether it's with a spouse or with a business partner or with a customer, communication is key.
Yeah.
And it's key in initiating the relationship and capturing the lead, and it's key in maintaining that. So think throughout the system, what else do you have to do to keep this lead happy and paying,
And then it's crazy because years ago, because I'm obviously significantly older than you, years ago, I literally used to have a folder that was this big, and I would have sheets of paper of leads, and I would have daily, and then monthly, and then yearly. And I would literally have to, I would move these leads from one to another. You know, when they'd say, I'm not going to buy, but I will next year, I will next month, I will whatever. And I would call I would just pull out today's leads and call those on paper. In today's world, you could say, hey, Derek had a baby. So 4 years from now, it's very likely he's going to want to buy a house where his kid's going to go to elementary school.
Exactly.
So you automatically have a lead. Yes, it's 4 years from now. Just like agriculture. Agriculture is annually, especially in like Nebraska, everybody closes on March 30th, March 31st. So I may contract with the property today, but I'm not going to close till next March, because that is how the ag season works. That's how the property works. That's how it works with the renter or with your tenant. You know, so you've got leads that if you kept track of them, it's like I tell people all the time is there's a data set for everything. And there's a follow-up for everything. And if you marry those two together, like in Nebraska, the average age of a farmer is 70 years old.
Yeah.
Average age of death of a farmer is 73. The average age of death has not gone up over the years. The average age of a farmer goes up a half a year every year. Well, guess what? If the average age of death is 73 and the average age of a farmer is 70, that means over the next 6 years, nearly every property in Nebraska is going to have a transaction of some kind, whether it goes to a relative or whether it is sold. And that's a small, weird data set, but there's a data set out there. No different than the Derek had a baby, and 4 years from now, he's going to buy a house probably.
Everybody watching should rewind the last 30 seconds, listen to that over, and start
buy farmland.
Looking at farmland.
Yeah, but it's true.
3 years.
3 years. Yeah, over 3 years. And yeah, play it back in 3 years, see if I'm right. But it's no different.
I guess if it's a half year, it'd be 6.
Yeah, and that's actually University of Nebraska data. So it's like there's these weird data sets, you know, and if you marry those together with automatic, you know, instead of, you know, using like a Salesforce or something like that, marrying that together with an AI that automatically does that proactively for you, it's amazing.
So in kind of the tech side, we usually describe these as like event-based triggers. So if this particular event happens, let's say you have this algorithm where once 73 meets 73, once that threshold is meet, that's an event. And once that event happens, it triggers this message to everyone who's involved. Like anybody who would be affected by this event happens should get a broadcasted message saying this property is going to, you know, potentially be up for sale soon. If you're interested in, you should keep tabs.
So, you know, again, we're primarily talking about real estate, but it's those real estate leads. Warren Buffett, who isn't exactly the dumbest guy on earth.
No, not at all.
He bought Iowa Real Estate, CBS Real Estate, and then he bought Ambassador Real Estate, and eventually turns this all into Berkshire Hathaway Home Services.
Yeah.
And the main reason is they want the relationship with the customer. That relationship that comes from I sell you a house, now I can sell you energy, now I can sell you insurance, now I can sell you furniture. He owns Nebraska Furniture Mart, which is here in Dallas too. Now he owns, and all these products all the way through your life cycle.
Yeah.
And it starts with a main data point is those that got the data win, you know, and if you keep it and manage that data, countless times we watch these companies in Nebraska that are ag companies. These guys make a little GPS.
Yeah.
The GPS isn't worth anything. They sell the company for $500 million because of the data that they collect on how these farmers are farming their ground. The data is worth everything. Yeah, there's money in the transaction, but there's also money in the future data of, I know this customer's living habits. You know, I mean, right now, you know, it's that those data points, and you marry that with today, I can bolt together all these APIs, and and I can gather other data points automatically. Like we were talking about, when somebody calls in on the phone, I can automatically map that call instantaneously to where they're calling from. You know, it's just, it's crazy, and it's so beneficial both to the current transaction you're trying to do and then down the road.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's like going back to Capital One. What do? Everybody, when you're in college, as soon as you hit your second year, my daughter gets a credit card.
Yeah.
She's automatically approved. It's crazy. Never bought a thing in her life. She's automatically approved for a Capital One credit card. And
she sounds like she's someone else's problem now.
Oh my gosh! So you should have seen. You should have seen me trying to explain to her how to put that in a baggie in the freezer and freeze her credit card, so that she didn't go use. She's also addicted to Amazon, so that's a little bit of a challenge. Have a credit card and addicted to Amazon, and she loves wild clothes. So it's like, anyway, but it's like you've got to get that data.
Yeah.
And then what did Capital One do? They went from cards to cars loans to home refinancing to banking to everything. They started as, when they were originally my original client, they were the 50th largest credit card company in the world. And now they're like number 2. And we're an information services technology company that happens to sell financial products. And it's like, if you kind of go with that paradigm, it's like you can make a ton of money in real estate because everybody has an address.
Yeah.
Even if you're renting, you have an address. So it's kind of all about the data. You know, it's like how you know, having the data, not just the transaction, but keeping that data for future. Like Graham Steffens, the YouTube guru guy on real estate, you know, he started when nobody was selling property in California. He would go out there, and real estate agents didn't want to go out and deal with renters because they don't make a ton of money. Yeah. He went out there and signed up rental agreements because he knew 2-3 years from now, he could come back to them and sell them a property. And he was gathering all that data of who all these renters are, when they rented, when they started, when their lease started, you know, and the automotive companies do that. When they sell you a car, they know, or when you lease a car, they know, bing, 3 years from now, you're going to get a ding, or just short of 3 years. Yeah. Hey, now's a good time to upgrade. Here's a special on upgrading your car to the next fancy car. Come down to the dealership. Here's a coupon to come down. You know,
one of Google's big incentives over the next 5-10 years is to have what they call a multi-cloud operation. So I think Google really understands that a lot of these bigger companies have traditionally, like they have legacy clouds or data centers that they work with. And each company traditionally picks products or services that integrate well with that cloud, which sometimes silos this data. So it's really important for this information to communicate with each other. And real estate is a perfect example of this. Because in a real estate transaction, you've got multiple parties communicating with each other in order to get a deal done. And a lot of the times, they're communicating with each other for the first time. Like we're talking title company, with lenders, with underwriters, with buyers, sellers, agents. Like these are all, the list goes on. You know, especially if you're doing occupancy permits and inspections. They're all filing this information in their process of getting this deal done on their own server. And those servers don't communicate with each other. So it's funny because on my before bot copy and things like that, I was doing these real estate transactions, and I'd reach out personally to the lender every day. What's the status? Have we collected enough information from the seller to move this deal through underwriting and get it financed and closed? And I'd have to continue doing this process because I was blind to what data was actually collected.
Right.
Now, there's a reason it's siloed in that specific example. These are all different corporations that probably wouldn't want to share data amongst each other. But if you're one corporation and you have several different departments, and each department chooses its own software. Like, one example is we work with Roche.
Yeah.
Big pharma company.
Yep.
They've got hundreds of different departments, and even subsidiaries and things like that that all have different product needs. Their help desk for running clinical trials has recently chosen to go with Salesforce. And Salesforce is a great tool. And this example works with pretty much every company that has multiple departments,
been there, done
especially like government agencies that have all like public sector to, or not public sector, public works to financial aid. They're all choosing Salesforce or Zendesk or one CRM tool versus another, and one cloud versus another. And it's great. They probably chose those for very strategic reasons. But what Google's focus is saying, look, choose your product that fits you. If it has an open API, we can communicate with it well with this like central controller. And they have so this way all the data sets go into one place. So if you're using this thing, it can communicate here and there. So that way, if this team is using this product and you collect all sorts of marketing information, well, your sales team can probably benefit from that marketing information, even though they're using a different software. So having this centralized tool and migration from Google's almost 100% focus on it. It's all they talk about is like Anthos and these Kubernetes and all these tools to make collecting and storing a centralized database really helpful for companies that traditionally have several products.
Right.
Because I think the biggest issue with implementing AI or any new tech thing is change.
Yep.
And change is from an operational standpoint. Do we have to hire new people to do this? We already have 1,000 people answering these phone calls. We have to, what do we do with that? That's like a big question. And that has a expense behind it. So making that change a little easier and also showing that, well, we can just migrate this job to this new position, or maybe it's not even needed anymore. And new job opportunities would open up. But to have this information be passed and understood in one central place instead of each department going all over the place that's Google's focus.
Yeah.
And that's multiple clouds' focus on having this like hybrid cloud model, because the information is so powerful.
Right.
And if it's scattered all over the room, and you imagine going into a traditional office where they've got file cabinets like all over the place, and you have to go and search for everything and pull it all out when it could just be one very organized file cabinet.
Yep. Exactly.
And, that's kind of the goal.
Years ago, decades ago, we actually started a company that was called In Real Time. That was like a separate company that was just to do that, because these companies would have this siloed data even within themselves, and they couldn't communicate. And then another company called SilkNet started about the same time doing that type of thing, and then a company called Kana that eventually kind of went away. But that data is so super valuable, and people ask me, well, what do you do today? I said, to be honest, I'm like the choir director for APIs. Yeah. I don't necessarily know how to build or run APIs. Some of them I can do. Yeah. But I'm the choir director of APIs, because today's world, why build something? Yeah. If there's an API, we constantly try and figure out, hey, how do I take the system I already have and make it to where it works with these other APIs, so that I don't have to go buy all this other, very expensive stuff. And like you're talking about, I had a conversation pre-COVID with a client that's a ag real estate company, and they literally were going to spend $3 million to migrate off of Lotus Notes from 1998. They had a 1998 version of Lotus Notes. Yeah. And it's like, don't migrate. Yeah. Don't go to another siloed thing. Take that data and go into this cloud environment. That's the place to be. Otherwise, you're going to last year's technology.
Exactly.
And okay, why go to version 1 of last year's technology when you should be going to how am I going to stay on the future instead of becoming siloed, and then you have silo people that only know how to work on this one platform, and it just, you need to be the choir director of APIs.
It's really funny. I don't know if you're using this terminology like on purpose, but
I make things up as I go.
Well, you're spot on, because in the IT language, they're called conductors. And that's what Kubernetes is, and these things, they conduct all these things and how to work and run with each other in parallel. So
yeah,
you're spot on.
Like I was telling you at lunch, is we built a very simple, just through APIs.
Yeah.
Where when we take a phone call, literally because everybody's annoyed by robocalls.
Yeah.
And one of the challenges we have today is true. Real estate agents won't answer their phone when it's a unknown number because they think it's a robocall.
Yeah.
Well, the nice thing to do is if I have Teresa's going to buy a house, and I transfer her call to you, the best thing for me to do is transfer her caller ID to you.
Yeah.
So when you get it, you get her voicemail. If you go to voicemail, you have her number on your caller ID to call her back. Well, when I do that, you think it's a robocaller. Well, what we rigged up through just APIs, literally an hour's worth of programming and existing APIs, nothing rocket science.
Yeah.
But literally it goes from our system to a Google Sheet, and then it picks up the last column of a Google Sheet and sends a text message through another carrier instantly. So when we transfer the call, you get a text message saying, this is a person who wants to buy or sell a house, and their phone number at the same time it rings on your phone.
Yeah.
So boom, I get a text message and I get that. I'm going to answer the call. And
being that streamlined, it's very cool. You're using Google Sheets like an API. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Streamlining that process, how much time and money do you think you're saving?
Oh, I think the real estate agent's getting more higher quality leads because now they're not returning a call.
Yeah.
And I don't have to manually key anything. My agents don't have to manually key anything.
Yeah.
It literally pulls the caller ID right off of Teresa calling in, pulls that caller ID off, punches it all the way through to the Google Sheet, all the way to the agent. There's a little scripting in there that just says, hey, this is a call from a somebody looking to buy or sell real estate from the call center, because we want to get credit for it because leads are valuable. So we want to get credit that we help generate this lead. And then they answer their phone versus thinking it's a robocall.
Yeah.
And it's just the best. Again, it's all about the customer experience. The customer wants to buy or sell or rent, and the agent wants to make money and wants that lead. And it's about making these APIs work to get that lead right to them so that they don't not take the call because it's a robocall.
Yeah. So I used to field these calls. So we would list properties, and I would field it for this this real estate fund I worked for in St. Louis, and I would get about 30 calls a day, and of which I think that we were actually able to get like pre-qualified to purchase were about 5. So that was a brutal 25 calls that were not, to be blunt, they were kind of a waste of time. If we were looking at just to close the deal, 5 ones came in that we could really focus on. Now, the kicker here is, I say waste of time because that's what I was traditionally looking at it like. And I actually took those 25 leads and never did anything with them. Now, what you could do in the system similar to this lead generation system we're conducting. Yeah. I liked that word. Is you don't have to destroy those leads. There's a lot of value between those 25. They just weren't front of mind for me because I saw that they weren't within a 60 days closing lead. But that doesn't mean we can't put them in a system that says, okay, well, we can't get you pre-qualified right now. Why don't we have this AI follow up with you every month? Maybe it's on a credit building program. Maybe it's on I think in real estate, honestly, half of the the issue with getting financed and pre-qualified is a lack of education on credit.
Absolutely.
And that's a whole nother podcast or a whole nother day.
Yeah.
But that's what it really boils down to.
Yep.
It's just the lack of knowledge there, which for me, just answering these phone calls, I mean, I'm human, so I can only answer one at a time.
Yep.
These phone calls would take about 10 minutes each. And if you do 30 of those a day and only get 5 of those, you can see it gets kind of frustrating. So those other 25 get just quickly pushed to the side and they continue.
Yeah.
But with a good system, those leads that I lost, those are lost leads.
Yep.
In 2 years' time, could have been great leads that a lot of people aren't focusing on.
Yeah.
And if you set up this system, not only can you capture and satisfy the 5 leads that came in and follow up with them correctly, but you can educate the other ones and build an even better relationship. If you help someone and educate them and follow up and put them in a different program, their loyalty and trust with you is going to be pretty high. So those leads that I kind of threw in the bucket, I should have done a better job following up with, but I just didn't have the time of the day and needed to close the other 5. I needed to spend all my time there.
Right.
But with this AI and the new system,
Yep.
it's totally possible. And you don't have to trash those leads.
I mean, I'm guilty of that. Not guilty, but I do that. For those of you who are, on LinkedIn,
yeah.
I got a $500,000 client from, instead of using AI, because I have a hard time making that work, and I'm probably violating LinkedIn rules, so hopefully they don't listen to this. But I have one of my employees in Costa Rica logging in like they're me.
Yeah.
Because I'm getting twice as much done. They're out there, hey, happy birthday. God, it's going to offend a lot of people. Hey, happy birthday. That wasn't really me. Yeah. Hey, happy birthday. Hey, thank you very much. Hey, congratulations on your promotion. All these things.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing. If you have the AI following up on the leads you already have, hey, I just want to see how you're doing. We're able to get this fixed, that fixed, whatever the case may be. You're making more money. The customer is actually happier because you're, thinking about them. At least you thought about them to build a system to do it.
Yeah.
Despite what people think, at least I have somebody that I've cared enough to think about to hire, pay them to say happy birthday. And the thing is, it works. It absolutely works. It's about how do you become efficient instead of throwing it away. Yeah. Now it's automatically regenerating. Look how many leads a day we generate.
Yeah. And your example with the credit one thing was he took an area that nobody was really focusing in and saw that there was a problem and people were avoiding that problem just because it wasn't worth it. But there was enough problems there that if you found a decent solution, then you can kind of excel on it. I think maybe it's Commerce Bank that has a really good case study that did something similar where there were so many banks that were competing with them that they decided not to do credit and they just went to debit and they opened up their stores until like 6 or 7 p.m. because they knew that there was this clientele that got off work at 5 and couldn't cash their checks. They also couldn't really get approved for a credit card, and there was this little market, and all of a sudden they got all these people that fit that need that nobody wanted to serve in the beginning because they couldn't figure out that problem. But they figured out that problem because enough data kind of pointed them to there. And I think that's like the power of the system that we're really selling here is like, look, capturing leads is great. Understanding the leads is even better. And following up with them contextually is kind of the holy grail.
And using every part of it. I mean, back again, you're probably not old enough to remember, but we used to generate mortgage leads. We were generating like 20,000 leads a month on average for one mortgage company out of Kansas City. And, we would do all these other banks and all that, and we would generate all these leads. Back then, we generate a lead and faxed it over to them, which I haven't used my fax machine in a year. But we would fax over a lead, and then they would say, your leads suck. And guess what? We would go there. and then turns around. You'd open the door, and the person doing the lead handling the leads, generate mortgage, 20 of them, he'd just read through them and put the rest of them in a file drawer that they never looked at. And they had all this data, like even if they didn't do it with that. And we went to Chase, and like I was telling you before, we went to Chase, and Chase was doing a refi program, or a second mortgage program. Mm-hmm. And they had these IT gurus that built this data.
Yeah.
When we tested the data, it had a 30% conversion rate because they ran, at that time, the best AI you could. And they would run these programs where they compared all these characteristics, and they could determine people that were likely to want to refinance or do a second mortgage. 30%.
Yeah.
If anybody came to me and said, yeah, I can give you anything with a 30% conversion rate, I'd say you're lying.
Yeah.
And look at what we've looked at with some of the tests we've done. Some of these are generating leads at a 60% rate. Mm-hmm. And granted, not every lead's perfect. I personally have generated my own appointment. I tell people this, don't think life is going to be perfect with leads.
Yeah.
I generated my own appointment for a company I suppose I won't name. And I went all the way to Palo Alto, California, met with them. And when I showed up, I made the appointment. I said, can I meet with you? Her name was Emily, because I remember that, because it kind of still irritates me a little bit. And I flew all the way to Palo Alto, California. She's late. And I get there. I'm doing like you're doing. You're flying in and out in the same day. I would fly there in the morning. I'd fly back out at 5 o'clock. In California, that was the last flight you could get. Yeah. I meet with her, and she says, I just want to make sure we're clear about one thing. I hate call center outsourcing companies. What I hate worse is
when they fly
salespeople that work for call center outsourcing companies. And I'm thinking, I said, not just out of curiosity, because at this point I don't see any opportunity. And this is a big trading company, more brokerage.
Yeah.
And I said, so out of curiosity, did you set the appointment just to tell me that? Because what are you going to do? I flew all the way across the country thinking, I'm going to make some money. I'm going to sell, this financial services company some stuff. And they were really growing back then. They were really small.
Yeah.
And so you can have you can have bad leads.
Yeah.
But you got to treat it as don't lose track of that. Believe it or not, she's still in my database, because I took what Zig Ziglar said and did that on steroids. I went from the taking my notes and putting them in a file folder this big to I have 8,300 followers on LinkedIn. That are all related to what I do or not. Some of them are just fun, but you take that data, my data set. If I said I want to sell that, I'm sure there's some salesperson that would pay 20 grand for my LinkedIn followers.
Yeah. So
the data is important, and the follow-up, and having it, like what we've done, that automatic AI follow-up. And the thing is, it's today's world, you can build and model things to fit your own company's individual needs. Even though every company that's a mortgage company or a real estate company does one particular thing, buy, sell, rent, you can still customize it to fit what is the process within your company.
Yeah.
And then the lead follow-up, I guarantee you most people that's not the top of mind. It's just give me more leads. Go watch Grant Cardone. Give me more leads. But he does say, hey, every lead is a valuable lead.
Yeah.
If we don't sell them today, we've got something we can help them with down the road to get them into this and get them into that. And, in reality, he's targeting those people with $350,000 in capital to buy into his fund. But, it's you all start somewhere.
Yeah.
Whether it's Graham Stevens, who started with nothing, or Meet Kevin, those videos that are out there. These guys start with nothing, and they learn how to build data and build relationships.
Yeah.
And these, whichever company you're with, coincidentally, the large ag company used to be a sister company to one of the large real estate companies we deal with today.
Yeah.
Way back when, MetLife actually owned both of these companies. So pretty interesting world.
It's hard to scale any business if you're not trying to figure out how to do what you did yesterday faster. And I
Right.
don't think that you can do that by having no clue what the data is telling you. You
Mhm.
know, you can make good guesses, and everybody is 50% lucky, and then good timing and things like that. But if you're not looking at, okay, here's how this happened, here's what I learned from this situation, like you were saying, taking notes earlier. Here's what we're going to do next time to make this situation better.
Yep.
Like they're giving you, and with chat, what's really interesting, it's almost direct feedback. If it's
Yeah.
I've studied a lot of like UX stuff on websites and UI, how it looks, how it feels. You can create heat maps. You can look where people like run their cursor. You can record the screen. You can morph colors around, all that stuff. But in chat,
Yep.
they'll tell you point blank,
Oh yeah.
I hate you. I hate this. Do not do this to me. And then you can change that,
Right.
And you can change it in order to help make that process, help that lead generation smoother.
Yep.
And also, so here's an interesting story. We work with NYU, with their business school. They launched a chat beginning of COVID last year for admissions.
Mm-hmm.
And their initial thought was financial support, financial aid, and then like kind of COVID-related questions about the status of the school being open. So that's what they launched with. Out of the gates, the chat was able to handle those questions. Where they let it run for about a month, and they started realizing chats were really coming in at weird times. And they reached out to us. They're like, "This isn't working. People are pinging us at 2 a.m. in the morning." And then where I was like, okay, well, let's look at some of these transcripts. This will be interesting. Because who's working at 2 a.m.?
Mm-hmm.
They're like, no one. I was like, well, perfect. Seems like the bot's doing a good job.
Yeah.
But let's take a look at these. And we found out that they were getting a really high volume of international students having questions about attending NYU during COVID.
Nah.
What's going on? And they didn't plan for that, but they got information from the data and the leads that were coming in that, well, maybe we should create some more international programs and pages to cater towards these leads that are coming in. Like, we don't want to lose this. This is good. So it was really interesting insight, direct feedback from chats. Hey, I'm in London and would like to attend NYU. What's going on? Okay, well, then they start building out these other flows or marketing towards the international students still being able to attend NYU. So as far as like feedback and user experience, these leads just really opened up a new opportunity of business for the school. And the same applies for real estate,
Yeah. We've seen that so often where people are like, oh, I send direct mail.
Yeah.
Well, you don't even know if they speak the language you sent the direct mail in.
Yeah.
I mean, mortgages, I made a lot of money because we would take data in California and call it in Spanish.
Mm.
And we had in South Sioux City, Iowa, we had a call center that did nothing but mortgages in Spanish and made a killing because nobody was talking to them. All these people are sending direct mail in English and they speak Spanish. You can't be any further off. And that's the other beauty of AI. It automatically changes language and all that. And you can, just the follow-up and the amount of the volume of leads you can generate and qualify even.
Yeah.
And you can say, okay, this goes here, this goes here, this goes here. And, that's where, the beauty of you're not looking at technology for today or buying yesterday's technology. You're going down into the future.
Yeah.
And the more you see, the more you learn it. It's like an employee that works for me. She's a call center agent. And I said, hey, look, if you really want a future of like where life is going, learn AI.
Yeah.
Watch YouTube videos like this. Learn AI. AI is where it's going to be. Guess what? Like we were talking about earlier, I have for almost any given client, I've got 5 years of voice recordings that I can literally transcribe those, turn those into intents, and turn that into AI.
Yeah.
Most every call center, whether you're a call center outsourcer or you're a Capital One, you've got those recordings where you can learn, teach, or train your AI just like that.
Yeah.
Just like that. And turn it into a machine. And even smaller companies, you know, we do a lot of city government work, and you can take that AI, and instead of having people call on a phone to report a trouble ticket, have a really good function. You don't need to build an app for a phone either. Just have a URL that's just straight to Bot Copy AI.
Yeah.
And type in what their issue is, and it can automatically create a ticket. And instead of, like you were saying, it's always bothered me that people build forums.
Yeah.
Okay, because you build a forum with, you're assuming that this is what their problems are, versus, hey, let them talk.
Yeah. And capture information along the way, right?
Yeah. Sales 101 is ask a question, let your customer talk, and shut up. Let them talk. People feel better when they get to talk.
Yeah.
So you know, the one thing is, we were talking about conversion rates.
Yeah.
And, you know, we're doing a project right now that is, unfortunately, we're contacting people that have Parkinson's disease and came in contact with a product called Paraquat for a legal firm. And it's like a 1 in 300 people we contact conversion rate. And like, I was talking to a real estate company, and they were talking about what's a normal conversion rate.
Yeah.
And they said, I said, well, what do you guys see? And they said, well, we typically see conversion rate to people that go to their website. It's like infinitum. I mean, they're talking like 1 million a day, and they get maybe 2,000 or 3,000 leads.
Yeah.
You know, it's just not high. But what we've seen in the little testing we've done, or quite a bit of testing we've done, is we've seen where that chat AI creating a conversation, it's so, in my mind, it's so simple, is, hey, I'm glad you're here. I mean, you know, realizing it or not, Jimmy John started greeting people at the door. What did Wells Fargo do? They start greeting you when you come in the door. They're learning from Jimmy John's.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing is, unless you're greeting people with coming in the door of your website, then you're an advertisement.
Yeah.
And there's a difference between creating a relationship and an advertisement. And I think some of the numbers we've seen are amazing.
Yeah, out of the gates, I was just reviewing before this. So we started testing last week with some new flows on the AI, and it's just understanding what they're here for and collecting a bit of information so we can help connect them to the right broker. And we're converting about 70%. 70% of the people that come and click the chat end up very excited, give us their details, and information's being pipelined over to the broker. Those are really high.
Yeah.
That's higher than I've seen in most cases, I'll be honest. I think the real estate use case is a great one. But that was just after a couple hours worth of iterations where we threw out live chat taking over immediately and plugged in Dialogflow to kind of handle the initial flows. Now, if it went off the tracks or they asked something that wasn't trained on the AI yet, this is where the cyborg kind of comes in. It pinged your live chat team, and they were able to come in and handle the conversation. Some instances where we haven't programmed Spanish yet. While it's totally possible to program Spanish and hundreds of other languages, we didn't do that out of the gates. So anybody that started speaking in Spanish, the AI automatically recognized we need to get it over to the Spanish-speaking live chat team. Yep. And it's great because then we can take those transcripts, start training the AI, and over time the AI kind of gets smarter and smarter with the help of the live chat team, kind of teaching it how to talk.
Yeah,
and that's a pretty cool thing.
And that's the beauty of it is I ran into a guy, basically how I started thinking of AI way back when is I ran into a guy at an American Airlines club in Miami and asked him, what do you do for a living? Because I got to talk to everybody. Yeah. And terrible habit. And he said, what I do is I go out to manufacturing places. I put all these sensors on the actual worker that's working in the manufacturing plant. And then I record all their movements, everything they do, and then I build a machine. I use artificial intelligence, and I build a machine to essentially replace that worker or do it faster. And I thought, wow, you could do that. We have, and so, you know, through the products, through this cyborg thing we've built, created, we've been able to, hey, when the agent answers something, it goes and a manager can actually change the flow or change the intent or change the result on their own. You don't need a $500 an hour programmer to go out there and do that for just simple things. You're not building the whole flow, but you can start to real-time learn off the conversations, which is true AI.
And how cool is that?
Yeah, I mean, it is.
Robots by
that's true AI, because I've had people come back to me and say, well, you know, they're out there saying they have AI and it's just a little workflow product or a little funnel thing. That's not AI. AI is it's learning and it's helping build conversations. Yeah. And even me, I'm not a programmer, but when I started looking at it, I realized this is the future. And then I got in contact with you and we've just created this monstrously fantastic lead machine, you know? It's just a machine. Yeah. And I think that's the future. I really do. Yeah. I mean, I believe it 100%.
I mean, good communication has been the core of successful business from the beginning. Yep. And now it's just even more important to take it to the next level with the tools that we have.
And now we know 60, 70% conversion rates are possible. Yeah. So not only that, you're getting more leads at a lower cost per lead. Yeah. So did you enjoy coming out here from California?
Yeah,
this Are you going to bring your guitar out here next time? And
next time, here? If I would have known, I would have definitely brought
I sent you a website. Oh wait, they don't have chat AI.
Well, it was there's some pretty heavy hitters to come in. In and compete with on the website. It's a good studio.
But you have to bring your guitar next time. Well, that'd actually be pretty cool.
I'll intro with the guitar.
Cool. They probably charge us a
little electric solo.
All right. Well, very cool. Yeah. Well, thanks for coming out. Hopefully we can do this again soon. Thank you,
Mark.